The context is critical as an
Uh-huh.
investor. I don't want to get too philosophical, but it's important. These things, it really depends on the neighborhood. That's why my best suggestion would be go to a house that has been fully remodeled. Someone a peer that is doing a colleague or potential sale in a few, like a mile away. Go and see what they've done. How long that house was in the market for? Did it sell right away? Did it sell off market? Did it sell on market? Did it sell within 15 days, a month, 2 months? It's sat for 6 months. Why it's sat? So I'm always saying, instead of going linear from present to the future, I always say, look at what other people are doing, because that person that just flipped their house maybe a mile away, he or she is 6-8 months in the future.
Hi, everybody. This is Joseluiz Morales. Welcome back to the Morales Group Show. This is episode number 60. Today, we've got a very special guest. His name is Joe Arias. He's a local investor, educator, best-selling author here in Southern California. And today, the topic that he's going to be covering is how to estimate repairs when fixing and selling a property, or even when you're doing a rental remodel. The reason I wanted to have Joe on the show is anytime we're ever selling a property, sometimes buyers see properties that seem to need a lot of work. They get a little bit overwhelmed. But the reality is that if you have the right systems, the right processes, the right team, you could really turn that ugly fixer into probably one of the best properties in the neighborhood. Welcome to the show, Joe. How are you?
I'm excellent. Thank you so much for having us, Luiz. I appreciate it. I'm humbled to be here, by the way.
I'm humbled as well too. So before we get into the show, I want to remind everybody, if you haven't smashed that subscribe button, I'd recommend that you do it. Hit the like button. It helps the YouTube algorithm. And if you like what we have to offer, just feel free to subscribe. So Joe, you've been flipping properties in Southern California for some time now. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are, how you landed into real estate, and just a little bit of information of who Joe Arias is?
Absolutely. So, I'll start with 15 years, 20 years ago, whenever that was, I graduated, and I remember driving my Maroon. I have a Ford Maroon car, and I was driving it to LA from St. Louis. I got a scholarship there from Argentina, and I was either going to do films, which I love films, by the way, or real estate, right? And I decided to do films. So kind of like my journey was, I gave myself 10 years to be happy to make a living on films. And after 10 years, I told me 10 years, if I'm not where I want to be, I'm going to make 180 degrees and I'm going to change directions and I'm going to do my second love, which is real estate. And that's what happened. I felt like, I'm sometimes I even a little ashamed to share something like this, but I for those 10 years, I literally got into the rat race, what people call the rat race. I got into this, you make money, but then you spend it. So you're not investing it, you're buying maybe liabilities, not assets. And I was doing wedding photography. And I remembered not telling anyone in the film business that I was doing wedding photography because I was ashamed. It's not something I really wanted to show to people. But you as you move on in life, I started doing real estate. I started investing in real estate after 10 years. My mark was like done. I was like, 10 years, Joe, are you happy where you are? Are you fulfilled? Do you see yourself? What's your 5? What's your 10-year plan? And I noticed that I was just not really fully fulfilled. So I made 180 degrees change. I started investing. It was not easy at the beginning. And you nailed this, Jose Luis. And cut me off if I'm talking too much, okay?
No.
Please do. But when I started, it was really hard for me to get into real estate. I was looking for a lot of deals, didn't know what deal to buy. I didn't know what I didn't know. And at our company, we talked about levels of being conscious, especially as an investor, right? I always share a lot about tennis. I love tennis, right? I haven't asked you if you play any sports, but I love tennis. And I always say that flipping houses, which I'm an expert in flipping houses. Me and my partners have done over 100 properties. We have rentals. We have different projects going at all times. I used to own a construction company, and now we're only doing investments and education and training. But tennis, think about tennis as every time you miss the ball, you get into the net, maybe it goes out. It's like $1,000, $500. Imagine how down would you be
Oh
If
yeah.
every time you miss that ball, you actually lose money. Well, investment is a little bit like that, unfortunately. Every time you make an assessment, a choice, right, that doesn't really, because there's a difference when you're working as an agent, you're working on a commission, and you still want the best for a client, right? You're passionate, you love what you do, and when you're investing, you're in a time crunch.
Yeah.
You got to buy right. That's number one. Number one is buy right. Money comes when you buy. That's where the money comes. So, and I like to use the tennis analogy because investing, it's a little bit like that. I have errors that, I have houses that I made over $100,000 with zero of my money in, and everything went perfect. And then what I learned in those projects was zero. I learned nothing because everything went according to plan.
Yeah.
Then I went into the projects that I learned a lot and I make a little, right? So it's a little bit about
lessons, essentially. They were good lessons, essentially.
Oh man, they're so ugly and very uncomfortable, but that's where like humanity is. We as human beings, we learn, right? We learn when we get our heart broken, or we learn when things don't go in our way, or we lose our commission, or we lose money on a project. But going back to the awareness, there is what you know, there is what you know, there's what you know that you know, right? There's what you know that you don't know, which you go and you find it, you get it. And then there is what you don't know that you don't know. And that's the issue right here as investors. There's a big part that we don't know that you don't know. And until you don't make that mistake, you're not going to learn from it.
So I'll give you an example, Joe. We recently sold the property. It was a buyer that wanted to buy his first investment property. And he's been wanting to do it for 3 to 4 years. But essentially, I noticed that once he saw what a good investment property looked like, because it needed a lot of work, he got scared. And he was thinking that he was probably going to have to spend like $100,000 fixing up the property, when the reality was that if you take that property with a little bit of paint, a little bit of changing the flooring, reglazing the kitchen cabinets, repainting the kitchen cabinets, reglazing the bathrooms, the property would look completely different. So I think that's one of the aspects, Joe, where most people are really scared. So like when purchasing a property like that, what should a buyer do to make sure that they're buying a property? Like, is there any inspections that they should do? Any tips and tricks, anything to watch out for during that process to make sure that they're not getting into a project that maybe is over their head? What would you recommend in that situation?
Absolutely. So, every single person will have their own opinions, right? How they see their own experiences. So I just would like to disclaim that what I'm going to say is just my opinion, what worked and what didn't work, right? And I think it's important because everyone there's no a truth. The only truth is your truth. And I would say that the first thing I want to say is at the beginning of this session, this meeting, you said that it's important to have the right team, the right direction, the right mentors. So that's one part. The other part is there's no tricks, right? You're asking me for a little bit of information. Yeah, getting an inspector is really important, right? Having an inspector, having a contractor is super important. Having the right tools, having the right deal analyzer, repair estimator. This is the information we all need to know to make an educated assessment. But having said that, there's no shortcuts or tricks. There's little things that we learn along the way. But this is a life choice. Being an investor, it's a life choice. And the more you know, the more you can just kind of like relax and kind of like lean back. But yeah, there's a lot of value that I can, from creating your asset strategy, right? Like always, when you're buying a house, before you buy an apartment, you got to get your strategy right. You got to get your exit strategy right. You have to get your asset protection. What happens in a building? God forbid your tenant, gets, mold or gets into an accident. And, I have a lot of friends that, when I interview them in the past, and sometimes I get to learn that they own 30 buildings, or they have 10 properties at the same time, and they use one entity. You don't want to do that, right? You always want to have different entities. So that's a little something that is important to plant in people's mind. Having the right asset protection strategy, right? Having the right documents. Go ahead.
So let's say it's a first-time investor and they're looking to do their first deal. Obviously, we're talking long-term, right? We're talking about like, hey, eventually, if you want it to own 10 properties, is a really bad idea because essentially if somebody sues you and you got all your properties in that entity, essentially they can go after all your properties. But let's start off with the very basics. Let's just say that somebody wants to walk into a property. What would be the best way for them to estimate some of the repairs on that property and know whether it's just paint, carpet? The things that I thought about in our last question was things to watch out for would potentially be like, okay, if the property has a code violation, that means that you're going to have the city involved, meaning that the city's going to be extremely involved and that
it can be, absolutely,
and that your repair estimate might cost a little extra. One of the things too is foundation issues. Sometimes those don't appear that obvious, but essentially if a property has foundation issues, that's going to increase the budget. Things like retaining walls as well too, things that hold like a mountain or something like that. Those are things that maybe when looking at it, you aren't really factoring it in, but things that could add up. The other thing is if it's on a busy street, essentially that might take a little bit of a hit in terms of price. So let's walk us through a home. Let's say that we walk in a home. Like what does your average home typically cost to renovate? Let's say it's a 1,200 square foot. Does it vary by area?
It does. It varies by state, right? We have students in different parts of America, right? We focus in California right now, but we do have students in different parts. So let me break it down because it's a really great question, and I'm so happy that you asked this. The first thing is your team. You said it a little bit ago. Your team. Get that agent, right? Get that Jose Luiz, like that. Get that like number one, right?
Oh, now I'm starting to like you, man. Now I'm just kidding.
Now you didn't like me before, huh?
Oh, of course.
Then even more get Jose Luiz, right? So he can also like you, and if Jose Luiz likes you, he'll really vouch for you and do his best job for that. So get your team, right? Get your team. Get a great agent. Get a good inspector. Get a contractor, right? So that's kind of like macro. Micro. We're walking a property, right? You can walk it with your inspector. I walked out a million times. It's always awesome to be that annoying person asking them a million questions. The guy's like, let me do my job. Well, I'm paying you, so why don't we talk here, right? But the things you want to look is, right, it's my strategy, what we like to do ourselves and what we train our investors, our students, is when you start, always think about the end goal and bring it back. Don't think about, I want to buy a house. I'm so excited. Think about the end goal. The end goal is, I would suggest 6 months. Don't stay for all over 6 months on your first flips. Why? Even if you make more money, don't, because money is scalable. So I would say, number one, think about a strategy. 6 months. You don't want to do over 6 months, because if you do over 6 months, in my opinion, that would involve permits. That would involve additions. You might want to, change this, change that, move that wall, extend it, transform, change that ADU, convert that garage, right? Whatever that is. And that will involve more errors. So first off is attempt to stay on a remodel between 2 and 3 months. And then think about from escrow buy, remodel, sale and escrow sale. Think about 6 months. That's number one. Number two, like you said, deal breakers, right? Check your, when you walk in, look at the electrical panel, look at, just everything's covered, right? Sometimes they will let you open a little bit of wall, especially as it's getting closer to escrow. So you can always have a contractor, but we never know what's behind. You talked about foundation, super important, right? What if there's some cracks, right? How are the cracks going? Are they going, horizontal, or are they going vertical? Like, those are all important things. If the crack looks that way, it might be easy, but if it goes in a different way, it might be a really big issue. The roofing will cost you between $10,000 and $30,000, depending how big the roof is and how old. So you want to look at that too. You want, I would say, retaining walls, don't even get in that. I would not get you. I would do flat. Don't go hillside. Don't try to reinvent the wheel in the first project. Look at zoning, right? I like to go into you go to the city now. Things have changed a little bit, but you go to the city, you ask a million questions. Who's going to be your inspector? When you are asking for permits, what permits you want to do? I always like to get 1 or 2 permits to get cover. You don't want to like do no permits to try to save a little bit of money, and then you have an inspector knocking on the door, right? So you can do like a small inspection, and then you can kind of finagle your way, but always with the truth. I'm not saying to lie, not saying that, disclaimer, right? But always be honest and be truthful, but try to always do but do the things the right way. There's a million things I can mention more.
So let me think about it this way. Let's say that somebody wants to paint. Let's go more in detail. So let's say somebody wants to paint a house. Let's say it's your average 2,000 square foot home, and let's say it's in Southern California. What should somebody budget approximately for something like a paint?
Just the paint job?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, are we doing drywall or are we just doing paint? What level is the drywall? Level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5. So they're very
levels.
Right. There's level of finishes, right? So when you're finishing a level 5 is a much more expensive and high level. If you're doing a Cape Cod house, which you probably don't want to like flip a house, you want to flip houses that are more of a, I would say depending your neighborhood, but you want to you don't want to like flip houses that are over $4 million unless you know how to do that, right?
So what Joe's referring to is he's referring that when you're doing paint, you can literally just paint over the drywall right there. You can retexture it if it has a certain coat that, like, we have a house right now that's got like this ugly, like sort of like stucco like feel on the inside that I don't know what it's called, but it's like a stucco type feel. So let's just say it's painting on the outside. Let's say it's a 2,000 square foot home, and let's maybe go over the different levels as to how expensive can it get. Because my purpose in this video is to help people, because a lot of times people, like, this buyer literally thought he was going to spend $100,000, and I looked at that deal having experience. I said, okay, look, you paint it, you do this and this, and the house is going to look completely different.
30,000 maybe, right? 20 and 40,000, and then you got
a completely different house now. So let's say a 2,000 square foot home, like your average home. What would paint typically run or something like that?
Can I reverse engineer your question?
Or range maybe.
I'll reverse engineer your question. The context is critical as an investor. I don't want to get too philosophical, but it's important. These things, it really depends on the neighborhood. That's why my best suggestion would be go to a house that has been fully remodeled. Someone a peer that is doing a colleague or potential sale in a few, like a mile away. Go and see what they've done. How long that house was in the market for? Did it sell right away? Did it sell off market? Did it sell on market? Did it sell within 15 days, a month, 2 months? It's sat for 6 months. Why it's sat? So I'm always saying, instead of going linear from present to the future, I always say, look at what other people are doing, because that person that just flipped their house maybe a mile away, he or she is 6-8 months in the future, right? Like they did all that work. Now you can just verify what sold, what didn't sold, what worked, what didn't work, what kitchen, what kind of finishes, right? Like we have different templates that we give to our that we train. These are flips that we've done. We've done tons of flips, and we started noticing patterns. To answer your question, it could be a few $1,000s. It could be over $10,000. It depends on the finish, but really important, go to the neighbor, see what they did, how long that house sat in the market. That will give you an idea of what you should do. Now, as you know, Jose Luis, as what we do is have templates. So we created over 30 templates of kitchens that are top sellers. So that's how we approach the system. After doing the wrong kitchens, I started compiling information, and now we have a system really good that I was like, well, I'm using this for my project. Why don't we share it with other people?
Yeah. What Joe is saying, guys, is that essentially, if you want to find out what's hot in the market right now, go to other flips that have sold in the area recently and kind of model what they're doing. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. In other words, don't try to come up with your unique idea as to what's going to work, because the system's already created. Basically, there's certain trends that are in different marketplaces, and there's things that you can over improve a property and also under improve a property as well too. And it may not make sense to put a $200,000 kitchen on a $400,000 home. So it just things like that. So essentially, for paint, it should run. It could run as cheap as a couple $1,000s, $2, $3, $4, $12,000 and as much as $12,000, $10,000, depending obviously on the square footage, depending on the area as well, too. What about flooring, Joe? Like if we're looking at flooring in a property, like how can somebody estimate the flooring? Is it by square foot? Is it just, hey, look, this is how much it costs? What would you recommend in that scenario?
Absolutely. So going back to what you just said, reversing engineering whatever your neighbors are doing. Also look at that flooring. What, if it's a rental, you don't want to like reinvent the wheel, put a lot of money. Just put slap some floors. You can do some compositive. There's vinyl. There's so many incredible materials. They're super cheap. Also, what you can do is, do you have a relationship with your contractor, right? Because we buy the materials ourselves, right? We already have the systems created. So we buy the material. We just go to a contractor and I say, hey, I got the materials. What's the labor, right? Because when you mix labor and material, a lot of the contractors, not everyone, but a lot of contractors will attempt to add money in the mix, right? But what if you can distinguish white from black, so it's not gray, and say, hey, I already bought the materials. You just have to pick them up from Home Depot, or we'll have them deliver however you want to do it, right? But if you can buy the materials, then it's easy. You're paying bottom dollars in the material, then you just pay the labor. Now the labor in a paint job could be 1,000, could be 5,000, could be.
Not only that, Joe, but it also ensures the quality of the material that you're using. Because I'm imagining that a contractor can say, okay, yeah, look, this kitchen's going to cost you $20,000. They go out and buy a $2,000 kitchen, which means that like if they say it's a $20,000 kitchen, how much is labor versus how much is material? Because essentially, if the kitchen's a $2,000 kitchen, but they're charging you $20,000, that's a big difference. It's a big difference if it's a $15,000 kitchen and they're only charging you $5,000 in labor. So that's actually a really good tip for our viewers out there, that it might be a good strategy if you've got a good relationship with somebody, is that to maybe buy the materials yourself and then have a quote just for the labor. Now, the only thing is that I know, Joe, that sometimes people like, I'm a painter, I'm a paint contractor, I'm a bathroom guy. Sometimes I get special prices for being the paint contractor, or sometimes I get special prices for being the plumber. Is there anything that a consumer can do to maybe benefit from that as well too? Let's say that as a contractor, you do get a special price. What would you recommend in that situation?
Well, that's a very good question. And I would say that if you have knowledge on an area, leverage it. Don't utilize it, leverage it. It's a difference. Leverage has scalability. Use it has not, right? And we talked about the traditional mindset and the success mindset, which is, do you do it yourself when you have rentals? Do you manage your own rentals? Don't do that. Don't use that. Leverage your authority in a project so you don't exchange time for, your time for money. The whole idea here, Jose Luis, I think it's important to say, is we have to learn how to remove ourselves. So if you're a plumber, don't do the plumbing, right? Leverage your knowledge to maybe negotiate or get a deal. We have a partnership with Home Depot, so we get some discounts, right? So leverage those things, right? But don't do the work. Don't try to save $1,000 and lay the floor or do the tiling or whatever you want to do. Because once you put your time on an action, now you're exchanging money for time. It's an exchange. And as an investor, we want to remove ourselves. We don't want to be the employees in an organization. We want to be, we don't want to be I call them the busy workers. You don't want to be the busy workers. You want to be the entrepreneur.
So what Joe is saying, guys, is that essentially, as your vision grows, essentially you want to focus on the thing that's going to produce the income. And basically, instead of maybe focusing on saving a little bit of money, installing some flooring, why not focus on getting the next deal? Why not focus on getting the next property? And then that way you can essentially continue to grow. So that's what he's talking about, having a team.
That's beautifully said. And let me say one more thing about that. If we're using the same energy to save money and to make money, saving money has a limit, right? Why putting it on saving it if there's a limit where making it has no limit?
Agreed, 100%. And I agree. A lot of people sometimes think that they're saving money by doing a certain something, but it's actually costing them more because they're not factoring in the opportunity cost, meaning what's the opportunity cost of my time? Like, could I do something else that would produce me a better outcome? What would you say, Joe, is like the most expensive thing to fix in a house? Is it the kitchen? Is it the roof? Is it the electrical? Is it a bathroom? Is it drywall? Is it a combination? What would you say is the most expensive thing to fix?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say it's a twofold. There's the two things you want to like really put the money in is in the kitchen and in the master bathroom, right? So if you're gonna have to invest money, not spending it, investing it, you put it in those two things. Now, if you have to spend it, foundation probably will be the most expensive one.
Yeah. So essentially, by investing, you mean you're looking at it like if I invest $1, I'm going to get some money back. Spending it means that, hey, look, this has to be done no matter what. Like the foundation is shot. There's no way around it.
That's right.
Essentially, because it's got to be done. That's actually a very good differentiating factor. Okay. And then do you guys have you ever flipped the property? And I know like, and I do this for some of my rentals, and I know that it may be different if you're living in a property, but I go in there and I look at a bathroom sometimes like, man, this bathroom's got to be gutted. And then I ran into somebody that reglazed the bathroom instead of redoing the bathroom. And I kid you not,
it looks new.
Completely new. And it was like a $400 expense. And now I'm thinking like, man, I'll reglaze the bathrooms a couple times every 2, 3, 4 years instead of replacing the bathrooms on some of the rentals. And it looks completely different. Do you guys ever do things like that in flips?
Absolutely. And here's the thing about that. It's a very good point that you said. Think about, you learned that from someone, right?
Yeah,
like
I saw it.
A contractor or a client did that and you were like, wow. And that was a team member that you had. It all comes back to your team. It's all comes back to having the right team, having the right contractor that doesn't want to make an extra $300-400 on that job. And he'll say, you know what? Let's save you money. Let's just like reglaze it. Let's move on. It'll be like, it'll be $100 of my labor, whatever. Let's move on to the next thing.
Yeah. And that was a big one for me because a lot of times people look at that, they're like, man, I got to redo the bathroom. And if you look at it that way, you're like, I could just reglaze it. $400 looks completely brand new. Now the budget looks a lot lower than what it actually appears. And,
roofing, you can do the same. You can patch it. There's work you can do in the drywall. Flooring, there's some gorgeous like wood, real wood flooring that you just need to maybe remove the old flooring, and a lot of great things will, you don't have to reinvent the wheel and spend tons of money on that. Like you said, sometimes a kitchen, you don't need to spend a lot of money. We all know that the strategies right now that, the strategies that I like to use. You open that kitchen, it looks beautiful. You put a nice, you put some nice tile and get a good fridge, and you start putting it together. It just looks really pretty, and all you did was you opened that wall.
Not only that, but sometimes even repainting the cabinets. I'm not sure. Do you guys ever do that where instead of maybe putting a brand new kitchen, that you guys repaint the cabinets and maybe change the hinges and maybe change the doorknobs? Is that ever a thing?
For rentals, yes, right? Think about it. Someone just left, you get someone else. The cabinets are not going to look nice again in 3-4 years. So you don't want to spend a lot of money on that. Probably what you told your client, right? For a flip, depending the budget. Like I remember my third flip that I did. That was a great deal. I bought the deal. My first few flips I was learning, and I said houses in California and LA. In LA, it could be expensive. You can buy them for $800,000, $900,000, $600,000, $700,000. So I went to Coachella. I went to Palm Springs, my first few flips, and I learned. I said, I'm going to make mistakes in $200,000-300,000. Now the music festivals are there and all that, right? But I remember those flips like that. My third flip, I bought this property at $50,000, and we just repainted the cabinets. We didn't buy new cabinets, and I bought it for 50. Put $25,000 remodel, and I sold it for $190,000 in a few months.
How much did you put into it?
25,000.
So 50, 75, and you sold it for 190. So here's the thing too, Joe, that I flipped a couple properties myself, and one of the mistakes that I made at the beginning, my first 2 or 3 flips, took longer than what I would have wanted them to take. And I almost felt like I over improved them as well too. So essentially I bought them with a hard money loan, and the hard money loan, the longer you take, the more you're paying in interest. You're paying a 10% interest sometimes. And that was eating at the profits. Looking back at it now, because we've got one flip in progress right now, and that flip, I literally changed the carpet, I reglazed the bathroom, I painted the entire house. I literally probably spent less than $17,000 into the property. Within 3 weeks, it was on the market, fully staged completely. And I'm selling for a lot higher than what I thought I was going to sell because of the market, because of the seller's market that we're in right now. Nothing special.
That was great, but you probably are not asking for more than 800,000. What is it, 700, 600 for that property that you're asking for?
675 for it, and we're in escrow at 757.
Right, so right before 800. So that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Because it's demand and offer, right? Right now there's a lot of demand and little offer. So it's a great market right now. So obviously that was not a big deal right now. So that's good. You didn't have to spend all that money. So good job for doing that.
So it kind of just depends on that. What would you say would be a reasonable cost for a kitchen? What would you say that would approximately cost?
I spend $30,000 on properties under 500,000, and I spend $250,000 on the kitchen. Well, just the kitchen. No, that kitchen was actually the whole flip was 300. I spent about 100,000 on that kitchen. So that it was
expensive. In other words,
the house was the kitchen. It was the kitchen, the living room, all open concept. So it also splashed to other places, right? But yeah, I mean, it looked beautiful, and that's what people were doing in the market. My neighbors were, selling at $2 million houses, and I have to, you got to spend a little bit of money. So.
Yeah, you're not going to put a $20,000 kitchen on a $2 million home. The buyers are walk in there and want to rip it out completely.
That's right. It will just sit in the market.
Yeah. What about like reglazing a kitchen? What would you say that would cost approximately? Would you say?
Well, just by reglazing a kitchen, you mean just painting the cabinets and
the cabinets, basically.
Yeah, any painting job should not be expensive. You should be looking at a few $1,000s. Always have a contingency plan. Add another 10-15% in case the numbers don't add right. Yeah. But the approach as a flipper, as an investor, we're always thinking about saving money, but also you don't want to cheap out on the materials. It all depends on the exit strategy.
Yeah, and then sometimes it might be a good idea, like, if the contractor gets a discount, to go with the contractor because he gets the discount, but you pay for it, so you know what quality of work essentially you're getting, and to get that estimate. Like, essentially, it's good to know how much are you actually paying in labor, because if he quotes you $20,000 for a kitchen, you might think, man, this guy's making a lot of money. But if the kitchen costs $17,000 and he's only making $3,000, dude, he's charging you a really good price. How would you go about selecting the right contractor, Joe? What would you say would be a tip right there?
I would just say use my document that we created. We just perfected it. I mean, when you're starting, you don't have the team ready, and what happens is when you're starting, you are interviewing for contractors, right? So you don't know which is the right contractor, which is not. So I go through maybe 10, 15, 20 interviews with contractors. I have a package that I created with answers all the questions that they might have. I tell them what are the things that I need from them. Are you licensed? Right? That's a good tip. Check their license, go online, make sure they have license. Also make sure that the contractor makes money. It's not just about saving money, because if you put a contractor on a tight spot, it's going to affect your end game in the next 12, 24 months, a year, 5 years. So make sure everyone is happy. Everyone is eating. You're providing a service to a lot of families. You're putting food in a lot of families. Make sure everyone wins. It has to be a win-win. So make sure I remember when I started, I literally would have a pitch, and I would look at myself in the mirror and practice the pitch that I would be talking to the contractors. Learn a little bit about construction. It really, really helps. It's hard to find it, but again, these are the things that we just picked after tons of properties that really make a difference.
So the way somebody can learn a little bit about construction, one would be to follow the home inspector around, right? That would probably be one of them, right? To basically follow him around and ask him questions, and even ask him like, hey, look, I'm not asking for your commitment, but could you tell me approximately how much this should cost to fix up? Because sometimes they write those reports, those home inspection reports, and to a first-time home buyer, they think, man, this home is falling apart, when the reality is every home has things that is wrong with it, you know? And sometimes it seems more expensive than it actually is. And some things need to be done immediately, and some things don't have to be done for 10, 20, 30 years as well.
Very smart. But think about what you just said, which is super smart. We're buying the house, right? They're selling, the seller. We get this document, right? This document is a liability to the inspector. They have insurance, and they don't want to be sued. They're gonna disclaim everything even more, right? There's a dragon in the attic, you know, whatever, right? There's I've seen ghosts, right? They will just put every little thing and more. You have these gory photos of mold, like looks like a monster trying to grab you from the photo in the picture, right? But the idea is utilize that, because you're buying. You know that you've done, maybe it's your first one, but you just know that a lot of things will show up. A lot of it is exaggerated. The inspector has to like disclaim all this. If the problems are really there, you don't want to lie, but if they're really there, you can leverage that report, right? In one of our last projects, I leverage, again, with truth. Don't lie, with truth. I leveraged $60,000 on repairs. $60,000. So I started that project $60,000 plus before I even started it, right? So I leveraged that report from the inspector. It cost me $500, and I leveraged that to the seller. I said, listen, I got all these problems. Look at these photos. Look at all this, and this is the work that you do, right? This is the work that you're always representing your clients, do the best job to lower the prices down, try to utilize that. So leverage those reports.
So what Joe is saying is, this is a mistake that I see, especially in the real estate game. A lot of people look at the home inspection as a cost. It's not a cost. It's an investment. What I mean by that, essentially a home inspection report can actually help certain people negotiate a request for repairs. I've got people sometimes say, I don't want one. I'm not going to do it, because they don't want to spend the $400 on it. But what if that home inspector finds things that weren't expected in the real estate transaction, and now you're able to get a $4,000 credit? Was that a good investment? In your case, it was a $60,000 price reduction that you were able to get. Not only that, I've seen it where to a buyer, you don't really see something is wrong with it. And in one case, there was no cracks, but the foundation was off. The guy literally put a marble at the beginning of the kitchen. The marble went down to the front of the kitchen, and he said, look, this is a prime example. The house is lopsided, and the marble went all the way to the bottom. And it was just really interesting to see that, because that wasn't leveled. Had the guy not gotten a home inspector, that's a $30,000-$40,000
more,
mistake.
even more.
Yeah, for foundation, it could be $100,000.
Even more, yeah.
Let me ask you a question. What would you say for somebody? Would you say that the remodel process could be different from a rental to a property that you're looking to flip, or do you spend the same amount of work on a rental versus a flip?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say that, think about the rental. You're not selling a property, right? You're just renting it, right? Unless you're selling it. But if you're like getting a tenant out and getting a new tenant, you don't want to spend a lot of money, right? Yeah. You got to cash flow that property. You have different quadrants, right? You have taxes, you have cash flow, you have a mortgage. So you want to cash flow that rental. If it's a flip, it depends, right? You're in a low-end neighborhood, like you're saying, maybe if the market is hot, you can leverage, spend less money on the kitchen and the bathroom, right? Because more people want it. But if there's less people that want it, then you might have to give a little extra touch up just to get that sell faster. But we live in America, and I'm an immigrant. I'm from Argentina, so maybe if I would be American, I maybe wouldn't think about this that much. But we live in a beautiful country with great people, There's a great heart. There's a lot of, it's an incredible country. I mean, in Argentina, it's, it's a third world country, and there's a lot of poverty, and but we live in a great country with great opportunities. We can like leverage money, other people's money, OPM, right? You can literally buy a house in America with zero of your money. Tell me another country where you could do that. We have the most amount of millionaires in America, with 35% of all the millionaires in America only. So we got money, right? We got top technologies here that we can leverage. We have great people, great communities here. I mean, especially right now with Instagram, Facebook, all the groups, and there's so many things that you can create. So I feel we're in the perfect time, in the perfect, moment, in the perfect place. With the only thing that is very important is the mindset. That is the only thing that it depends on you.
So I agree with that 100%, Joe. I agree. I think a lot of people put like mental barriers in their
We all do. Yeah. I do it all the time too.
Yeah, me too. Like essentially, some people say, well, I don't have the money, therefore I can't buy a property. But what you're talking about is that you can raise money, you can partner with people, you can do a lot of stuff even without money, as long as you have the right knowledge.
Especially without money. Yeah, absolutely. All of our training that we do to our students, I tell them, you have the money, don't use it. Utilize other people's money. Give your papa a 10, 12% return. Give your friends, I have people that lend me money I never met. Mm-hmm. Literally, they were friends of friends or people I did business with, and they were like, listen, I don't have to meet you, just get my percentage. And you do that and everyone is happy, right? So mindset for sure, like you said, very important.
Here's one of the things that I was excited about, Joe. So off camera, you kind of showed me this, your training that you have for students, and I could see your face glow, man. It just lit up. But I wanted to kind of allow you to share that with people. And then there was a section that really blew my mind, because it had samples of other properties or samples of finished work that you have renovated it. And it actually had a link to purchase the actual part. And to me, that was mind blowing right there. And I think it goes hand in hand to what we're talking about, because sometimes people don't know what type of finishes, what type of faucets, what type of this, what type of that. Could you walk us through that, Joe? Can you walk us through that? And
how do I do that? Can I share my screen?
Yeah. So I'm gonna pull it up right now, and I'm gonna exit. So if you just let me see, it should be on right now. So it's on right now, and then as you pull it up, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go off camera right now, so it's just you and that. If you could share that portion, Joe, where essentially you kind of showed me the kitchen and you kind of showed me the faucet, and if you can give us like different examples of that, I think that is a great tool, man. And I think that right there can people could see the finished product. So I'm gonna go off right now, and then you tell me. Are you ready? Or
yeah. I'll say one more thing just to get. I'm ready. So a little context for everyone is, when you're starting a project, when you don't have the experience, it's super important to have the proven systems, right? We were talking about. So A to Z. That's after all the flips and all the rentals and everything we've done. I said, okay, I got all these tools, and I put them together, and that's what Jose Luis is asking, and I'm going to share it with you right now. So it's really important to know that you can do this as long as you have the right systems, A to Z. So what happened is, let me actually come here. I'll show you here. So I don't know if you could see that.
Yeah, 1 second. I'm going to allow you to share it right now. Hold on.
Absolutely.
The last thing for the viewer, or I'll share it at the end. Let me go back.
So just let me know when it's ready, and I'll start here.
It's ready.
It's ready.
You can start now. I'm gonna logged off. I can't really say anything.
Excellent. Oh, you can't say anything. Copy. So we have here the education, right? We have two pillars. We have the education. This is our backend website that our students have access. And then we have the toolbox. The toolbox are all the tools that you need. And I'm going to come to the feature just like Mr. Luiz was requested. So in the toolbox, we have deal analyzer, repair estimator, online design, checklist, we have tons of checklists, we have all these legal documents. We have over 100 legal documents that you can use. But the idea is, why reinventing the wheel, right? So I'm going to come here to the kitchen and bathroom. The two most important parts of the house is the kitchen and the bathroom. So here we are, right? So from tons of flips we've done, we started seeing some patterns, right? Things that were selling a little bit faster than others, things that were really on vogue, things that were selling cutting edge stuff. So what we put together, we started seeing patterns. So here I have over 15 kitchens, 15 top sellers, right? In the internet might be a little slow, you might see right there. And it all goes back to, really, just reverse engineering what you're doing. So if your budget for a property to sell is between 200 and 700, your sales price, then you have all these treatments, right? If your budget is over $1 million, if your property is over $1 million, then you have the difference. So let me just go to the first one. Here we go here. You click here. We have a partnership with Home Depot, and check this out. We're talking about white and black and gray. Sometimes when you're working with a contractor, you have a lot of gray. But what if you didn't have a gray? Especially when you're starting your first projects, there's over 15 vendors on a kitchen. You have tons of vendors. You have appliances, floor, drywall. There's even like the little hinges from the cabinets might be different vendors. So what if you could actually get all these vendors in one roof? What if you don't have to go and reinvent the wheel and made all these new relationships with people? What if there will be a one document that with a click of a button, that was one click, you could have access, talking about A to Z, right? You could have access to all the SKU numbers from this kitchen, that you can press a button and you can print that. You can make a phone call to Home Depot or send this through fax, and they could deliver all the SKU numbers. You had cabinets, countertops, floor. These are all the vendors, right? Different companies, right? How helpful would be to have something like this for a brand new investor that doesn't have the relationship with the 15? You don't want to go and save $100. This is going to cost you more because your time has a price. What if with a click of a button, you can go tell the contractor, hey, listen, I got the kitchen, I got all the materials picked. You just have to pick them up or they're going to be delivered to the site. All I need you to do is to give me the labor. What's your labor? What's your cost for the labor? And what if you could not only have one of this, but over 15? How much difference will help you be, scaling that? This is just one tool of over 30. This is just the one that Jose Luiz was interested in showing you. But what if you could have the entire flipping and also rentals, right? Have everything scaled in a way that you're just literally looking at the information, looking at your neighbors, looking at what works, what doesn't work. Look at all these kitchens, top kitchens that we created. With a click of a button, you have access to all of this. What difference would that make for your business, especially starting out when you do need the hand holding, a little bit of help, some mentoring, some coaching?
And that's what I'm excited about, Joe. Like when I saw that, I was like, wow, that's a really neat tool. I know that you got other things. The last thing I wanted to say is just as it relates to the process of doing work to rentals, I would recommend talking to people that have already done this type of work, but just realize that some of the things are actually not that expensive. And I tell you this from a real estate perspective, because as a real estate agent, we've helped clients with the renovation property of hundreds of their properties. And sometimes just simply changing the carpet, which is an inexpensive thing, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, depending the size of the house, maybe $5,000, can make all the difference in the world. Sometimes inputting a new paint of coat, carpet and paint can make all the difference in the world. The thing is that you want to make sure that these things are within reason as well, too, because some of the things you might not get the money back. But essentially, you got to be careful, meaning don't be careful during your inspection process, meaning make sure that the house doesn't have any foundation issues, any things that are gonna bearing walls, anything that is going to dramatically increase the spend. And also just make sure to get a couple of estimates. And what Joe said, make sure that you maybe participate at least in your first couple ones. That way you learn the process. Once you learn the process, it'll make things a lot easier for you. And then obviously Joe has his program as well too, where if you wanted to sign up, you can do that as well too. And he can basically help and mentor you in that department. Is there anything that we might have missed, Joe, that you think would be helpful for our viewers in any way, shape, or form?
I could spend another 7 hours, which I would love to do. We do once a month. We do this all-day seminar. Literally, it's like an 9 hour seminar and a webinar right now online, and it's just there's it's I would say you hit it on the nail. I think that there's something very powerful about the power of association. And I remember when I started in my journey, people say a few $1,000s. I'll be like, oh my God, I don't want to spend that money. I can do it. I can learn this, right? There's a distinction between information and knowledge, right? One thing is to read in a book, how does it feel like to have snow falling in your body? Another thing is to actually experience it. That's the knowledge, right? Same with the flipping a house or passing a tennis ball from one side to the other, right? You can read it, you can look at it on YouTube, but it's not until you do it. And it's super important because there's so many risks. So I think it's actually a must that you have a coach if you want to succeed, because in power of association, you get to change your mindset. And we all have growth, expansion, things to do, things to improve, right? So I think that if I want to leave you with anything on this meeting, is that, it's great to seek help. I love it. I was like, really, it was very hard for me to ask for help in the past. That's why I was like, I can't do this on my own. And I learned making that mistake cost me $97,000, right? Oh, that repair, right, that I didn't do. We can like fix that foundation later. That cost me $10,000. That ball passing cost me $1,000. That other ball that went wide cost me another $5,000. So why not, if you can actually start strong, right? Especially there's a study right now. There's been a study across America. I like statistics because they show you a big picture that we might not be seeing. That there's an average on flips over $70,000 an average flip in America. AdSense data, 70,000. That's the average. Some people make 40. Some people, one of our students, make $200,000 on his first flip.
Yeah,
200. It was 240 actually. But anyways, so if the profit, if the common profit is $70,000, why not jumping in? Because there's not only a cost for you not doing it, but there's a cost for delay. Every 6 months that your life passes, that maybe you didn't jump in an opportunity, is potentially over $70,000 that you could have made that you didn't make.
Yeah. Awesome, brother. Cool. Well, I want to encourage everybody, if you haven't hit that subscribe button, I want you to smash it. If you haven't hit the like button, please do so. If you found value in this podcast, please share it. Joe, last thing, if people wanted to get in contact with you, or if people saw value in your information, where could people get a hold of you?
Absolutely. And as I'm pulling this, like here I am, how prepared I am that I'm looking at our phone number if they want. I guess I'm going a little bit old school here. Let me give you a website. So our website is called ourrealsuccess.com. The phone number is there. You can call us. And what I'm going to do for you, Luiz, is we have webinars, right? Some of the webinars we charge, some of them are free. But if they do mention when they call, and we do get a lot of phone calls, if they do mention your name, and I hope that it's okay if I do this. I didn't ask for your permission, but if they do say your name, we will do absolutely free coaching. One session where either me or someone from our team will do a session where we will look at what are their goals, right? We'll talk with Susan, with Mary, with John. Let's look at your goals, right? What do you want to do? You want to do flips, rentals, wholesaling, passive income? Where do you want to get in the next 12 months, 24 months? What's your 5-year plan? We will do this if they mention your name, so at least they can have a roadmap. It's all about having a destination. Then things will take you around. Life will just always swerve you around. But if you know where to go, you can go there.
Absolutely.
So our real success.
Perfect, everybody. All right, everybody. This was episode number 60 of the Morales Group Show. Investor, educator, best-selling author, Joe Arias. And thank you so much for being on the show. If you guys have any questions, comment below. We're happy to help in any way that we possibly can. Thanks again, Joe.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.